Legend of Korra Season 2, Episode 6, titled The Sting. This episode I enjoyed, but at the same time, it did a lot that made me really upset. The biggest thing being that Asami kissed Mako, and it's like, he broke up with Korra in the last episode, and I enjoyed that actually because all they did was argue. Like they skipped over all, them being together and happy to, them just yelling at each other. And then in this episode, Mako's helping Asami, and initially I didn't think, anything of it. It was they were working together. They didn't have, any of those moments until towards the end of the episode when things are pretty much at the end for Asami. And like I'm really glad she was you had a big focus for this episode because she hasn't really had one. But it had all this great focus on Asami and her getting help from Barrick, which of course I'll get to that, and getting help from Mako, and then in the end she ends up kissing him because he's helping her, and it's like why did that have to happen? And mostly because of the fact that they were together, and then he kind of just ditched her for Korra, and then things go bad because Korra's pissed with the Civil War and being the Avatar, trying to be neutral but not being neutral, and he breaks up with her, and then obviously he didn't kiss Asami, so that was like the one silver lining is that he did like completely like back away from her. Well, obviously he didn't actually back up, but he was pretty much stone faced. He was like not trying to do that, but she obviously felt something for him because he was helping her out, and she wanted to give up, and he said, well, I'm not giving up on you. And when he said that, I was like, okay, it's a little close, but it's not that bad. And then they showed her crying. I was like, oh man. And then they showed them apart. I was like, yep, they're finna kiss. And I thought he was gonna, they were both just gonna kiss. And so once again, like a little tiny silver lining, she kissed him, and he didn't move like at all. I was just like, okay. And he kind of just backed away. So it really sucks to me that she did that just because of basically the way he treated her in season one. Because I don't know, just because I personally would never have done that to someone. It's just no, it's just like obviously the whole relationship stuff they had. He's with her, and then it's like he suddenly he falls for Korra, and then doesn't exactly break it off with Asami, and just that whole crap really. And then it seems like it's just reversed now, except he actually broke up, with Korra. But that little bit I didn't really enjoy, but the rest of it I thought was great. And then of course, like the next scene right after was actually really cool when he did like when Mako did like the little fire blade thing. I thought that was cool. And then once again I got sad, although this wasn't because they just did something that actually disappointed me. It's because we find out that Barrick, who I thought is a was an amazing character, and he's hilarious, he's always funny. We find out he's a bad guy, and he basically tricked Asami because as he said in the last episode, when he was talking with Korra, how he basically backed the guy who's the president, and he backed the other guy who was running. He was like, hedge your bets. And I was like, well, that's exactly what he's doing. And that's what he did. And he came in, stole all of Asami's stuff, and then, he turns right around with Asami not knowing, obviously, and says, hey, I'm basically going to help you out and buy a large chunk of your company to support you. And then, of course, I'm, based on my little knowledge, him buying a huge chunk of her company will eventually allow him to take over because, it's basically just him and all of his money because obviously she doesn't have any when all of her stuff is continuously stolen. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but I hated that reveal because, I love him as a character. He's so funny, and now he's a bad guy, so it sucks. But the other little side story, which still involves Mako, is Mako and Bolin kind of, being at each other's throats, but, not really, more like just, the opposite of that, really, because Bolin is basically, ignoring Mako because, Mako told him to, figure out, what he should do when they got to Republic City, which I didn't think should have made him so mad because it was just like everyone was going to do something, and Mako was like, I don't know. Like, he said it kind of mean, so I get it, but at the same time, it was just like, I don't know, figure it out, because obviously you can't help me, you can't help the Avatar, you can't help Asami with her business, so figure it out. That's literally all he could have actually said. He couldn't have been like, come with me and turn into a cop or something, but Bolin got mad at him, and he was mad throughout the whole episode. And he's doing his acting, which is of course really funny. And like when they actually had the movie, I really enjoyed watching that. They pretty much showed the whole episode, which was funny, and an obvious throwback to the really old movies where they do. Well, it's not really a movie. It's a show. It's just shown like in theaters. And he's like flying all of a sudden, and all the bending just looks horrible, and he's just like does this, and then water just falls straight down, and it's just classic, old movie stuff. So it was really fun to watch that, and him trying to basically get over Desna and try to date Ginger, and she basically just hates him. And my favorite part was when he kissed her, and after the scene she gets up and he's like, she says, you're mixing up Ginger the character with Ginger the actress. And he's like, I must be confused because, a minute ago in the scene, you were so into me. And right now you act like you're not. And it was just funny. Like, she literally just explained that situation. And he's just, like, repeating it because he just doesn't get it. But I enjoyed, him acting and, being a star. And then eventually, well, they don't really patch things up in this episode, I guess, Mako and Bolin. But, I'm sure they will, and Mako will go back to Bolin because, obviously, he can't really go to Korra, which, once again, I'll get to that, too. So, hopefully, they'll patch things up in next week's episode so that, Bolin can help Mako pretty much save Asami from Barrick. And it might be really hard for Mako to convince Bolin because, for one, he's mad, and two, he's working with Barrick, so obviously, he's not seeing the evil side of things, and he just thinks, hey, Barrick's making me a superstar, he's giving me tons of money, I can buy a hot tub and put it in the middle of an apartment, which makes no sense. But, he's only going to see the good side of Barrick, so it might take a while for Mako to, convince Bolin to actually help Asami. But, however that plays out, I'm really curious for. And then, once the whole story's done, Mako figures out Barrick's a bad guy, Barrick, saves Asami, and Bolin just keeps being an actor. We get, a little snippet for next week's episode teasing us for, what happened with Korra. And she doesn't go into the spirit world, or maybe she did. I think that might actually be what happened, is that she did go into the spirit world when she was swallowed up by the spirit. But, whatever she went through, she escaped, or maybe she was cast out or something like that. Because, as we learned from season 1, she's not exactly like a spiritual avatar. It took her forever to get her airbending, and that only came from her losing the rest of her ability. So it just kind of, it activated her airbending and her avatar state. So she could have been cast out for not being spiritual enough, and that's kind of why she lost her memories, because it wasn't, I'm gonna leave the spirit world. She was cast out, and she wakes up on this island with the elders, the fire temple elders. I can't remember their actual names, but I remember them from Avatar: The Last Airbender. And they try to help her out, and they say, how'd you get to the island? And she doesn't remember, and she doesn't even remember who she is. And I guess that kind of spoiled. It was sort of spoiled from the preview. They constantly repeat over and over again when they ask her, do you know who you are? And she says, yes, Avatar Korra. So obviously, she'll figure it out. But obviously, we knew that even, right now, if you hadn't seen that preview, you could guess she's not just gonna not know who she is forever, but she's gonna gain her memory. And the fun of that is saying, how will she do it? And I assume it will be, through, her being more spiritual, which actually could work easier now that she's kind of a blank slate, because obviously with her, being pretty much hard-headed and just, that rough and tough fighter type, with her being a blank slate now, it'll be much easier for the elders to teach her, this is how you bond with the spirit world, and this is how you enter, and exit, and it could, you know, even change up some of her abilities, mostly the avatar state, because as you know, when we see it, it's fairly simple when she uses it now. It's, you know, she can obviously use all of her abilities at once without having to switch constantly, but it's generally really simple. You know, she always does like the little tornado, and you know when she was on the water in last week's episode, she did the water tornado, and then any other time she just flies up and shoots fire, and that's really it. But it could, you know, just make her more powerful and, you know, get her into like a true avatar state. I guess this could be like, you know, sort of a point 0.5 avatar state or something simple like that. And then we actually get to see a full avatar state where she's actually insanely powerful, like, you know, Aang would be, or Aang was really in, you know, the last Airbender, and even in season one when we got the flashback, and he's just like, you know, insanely powerful. So we could get that, but even if we don't, it'll be great to see, you know, her development. You know, which is kind of funny that they have to like kind of literally wipe who she is as a person away to give her development, but you know, it just kind of shows that's just how they had to do it. It kind of seems like a cop out when you think of it in sort of a pessimistic type of way, I guess, because like I said, they do have to kind of wipe her as a character out to develop her as a character. But at the same time, when you develop a character a certain way, you have to invent a way to, you know, make them develop. And with her being so hard-headed, that is the only way. With her, you know, starting over and kind of being a spiritual character, and then, you know, regaining all of her basic, you know, concepts. So she'll be like a complete avatar, which would be nice to see. And something else we got, um, her uncle, I keep forgetting his name. He met his kids coming out of the spirit portal. So whatever he's doing is insanely serious, because he wouldn't go in there if there wasn't a reason to do it. And considering how angry the spirits are, obviously, you know, I can only assume that the spirits in the spirit world are still good. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have gone, because he'd be completely surrounded by evil spirits. But he was doing something, and you know, when he comes out, you know, they say like, you know, did you just come out of the spirit world? And he's just like, you know, don't worry about that. So whatever he has planned, it's just crazy, because you know no one's ever done anything like that in the series as far as we know, or in the universe really, as far as we know. So I'm excited to see, you know, what in the world he has planned. Like, is he working with spirits? You know, is that why he was there? Was he there with Korra? Is that why she lost her memory? Like, you know, her being swallowed by the spirit and him just being there, you know, could they possibly overlap, or could they have overlapped at some point? You know, it'll be interesting to see how that works. But I don't really think that happened, because, you know, if that were the case, something really intense would have had to have happened for him not to, you know, caught Korra, or for, you know, once again, for her to actually lose her memory. So it'll be cool to see, you know, why he was there, and if they did ever actually overlap. And it would be nice to see if they did, and you know, maybe he kind of came out angry because he lost her or something like that, and he couldn't just say, you know, she was in the spirit world. But at the same time, when they say, you know, the avatar is dead, he kind of would have just said, you know, no, she's not, she was in the spirit world. So I doubt that happened, but I'm excited to see whatever he has planned. And I'm really excited to see how the elders train Korra, you know, in the next episode. And also, if you notice, the first thing she did was use airbending. So once again, with her being, you know, more spiritual now, I think it'll kind of tie into the first season where she wasn't, you know, really spiritual in any way until she was more like Aang. So that'll be kind of cool to see. And also, we got more water fighting in this episode with the boat stuff. That was just to randomly mention. The action was mostly on the water again, and it was kind of cool. But you know, this whole episode I thought was pretty interesting. You know, like I said, was kind of sad that Asami kissed Mako, and really sad, like more so, I should be more sad about Asami kissing Mako, but I just love Barrick as a character, and now he's a bad guy. And even though he would be funny, it'll just be like, but he's evil too, so it doesn't work as much. But comment below, let me know what you thought of this episode. Mostly, the two main points, and I guess three because obviously Korra losing her memory is important, but you know, Asami kissing Mako and Very being a bad guy. What do you guys think? And of course, what do you think happened to Korra in the spirit world? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.